Something that you can never have too much of is grace. For me, grace has been one of those gifts that has carried me through some of my toughest seasons in my life. It's been a tool. And, I hope today's conversation will bless your journey too, because we're going to talk about grace, what it means, how to embrace it, and why extending it to others can transform our lives. But what is grace? We hear about grace all the time. We say we give grace. We say we want other people to give us grace. But what exactly is it? Grace is unmerited favor. Grace is the divine help that we receive not because we earned it, but because that's just how much God loves us. And he loves us in such an unconditional way. Unconditional. Like, what does that even mean? It means that you don't have to work for it. You don't have to prove that you deserve it. You don't have to go out of your way, do good works. You don't have to check off all the boxes to receive grace. It is already yours, friend. But the thing with grace is that sometimes we actually resist it because we beat ourselves up over mistakes that we've made in the past. Maybe it's something that we didn't get right, and now we feel like we're a failure. We feel like we don't deserve grace because we aren't worthy of it. We compare our progress to other people. We feel like we are just not enough. But let me tell you, you already know, I don't even have to tell you that all of that is exhausting because, at the end of the day, grace reminds us that God's opinion of us does not change based on human and fleshly performance on this earth, like our own performance on this earth. And so there's absolutely nothing you can do to earn grace. Nothing. You don't have to put on a performance. You don't have to go out of your way. You just have to believe and know that grace is a gift for you. And when you recognize that you deserve grace, you actually free yourself to live, to just be. You're no longer putting yourself in this prison of feeling like you don't deserve it. So, let's say you make a mistake and you're all in your head, you chastising yourself, you calling yourself worthless, you feel like you don't deserve a second chance or any chances at all for that matter. And so you're beating yourself up. But I want to tell you that it is all in your head. You have created anguish and mental anxiety for yourself because you're telling yourself things that aren't true. They simply aren't true. Like, those are not facts. Those are feelings. And the fact of the matter is that grace is unmerited favor. God has so graciously given it to you in abundance. And guess what? You deserve it. Like, I never want you to forget that you deserve grace. Ephesians 2:8 and 9 tells us that for it is by grace that you have been saved through faith. And this is not from ourselves. It's actually a gift from God, not by works, so that nobody can boast. So basically, if God is extending this kind of grace to us, that means that he loves us and that he cares for us. And he wants us to be easy on ourselves. He wants us to see ourselves the way that he sees us. He wants us to give ourselves the grace to grow, to thrive, to become better, to become the most excellent versions of ourselves, okay? Not to live in perfection, but to say, God, I know that I'm not perfect. I know that I fall short, but I'm leaning on you for my strength. And if God can extend that kind of grace to us, shouldn't we also extend it to ourselves? Like, that's the question. Like, shouldn't we also extend it to ourselves? Like, why is it so hard for us to do that? I really, really want to know, like, why is it so hard for us to extend grace to ourselves? And I can speak to myself, like, it's no secret. I've spoken about my trauma many times that I've endured throughout my life and the life lessons I've learned from it in the past. And it was so hard for me to extend grace to myself because of all the things that I had been through. And trauma has a way of changing your mind, changing your perspective, and changing your perception of how you view yourself. It decreases your confidence. It gives you a false perspective of who you are, one that is not in true alignment with what God says about you. And when you're in that space, you're not extending grace to yourself because you feel like you don't deserve it. You feel unworthy. But again, grace is what? Unmerited favor. Like, you don't have to be worthy or feel worthy to have it. It's already yours, friend. It is free. It's free. So why shouldn't we extend it to ourselves? We should. We should give ourselves grace at every turn of every single day of every minute and every hour. And so if we should give it to ourselves every hour, like what does embracing grace for ourselves look like? Again, for me, it was one of the hardest lessons that I personally had to learn, which was giving grace to myself. Like I'm the type of person who is always setting goals. I'm always striving. I'm always being ambitious. I'm always doing something, right? But sometimes we get so caught up in the doing that we forget the importance of just being. We forget the importance to just simply be. And I'm gonna say that again. Sometimes we get so caught up in the doing that we forget the importance of just being. And the truth is that throughout your faith journey, throughout your life, throughout setting goals, throughout all the things, you are allowed to be, dare I say it, a work in progress. In all the doing, you are allowed to just be. You are allowed to make mistakes. You're allowed to grow at your own pace. Grace does not mean ignoring accountability. Grace means recognizing that you're a human and that God's love covers all of your shortcomings, not just some of them, some of them. So I want to ask you, when was the last time you actually forgave yourself? I mean, not one of those quick, oh, I'll just do better the next time things. I mean, like really, really thought about something that you were convicted about, sat with it, and then forgave yourself. Like when was the last time you said, I forgive myself for this because that's not how I intended to act. That's not who I want to be. I feel short. So I forgive myself. That is where grace begins. Like when you can forgive yourself for something that you did, for something that you feel short on, that is where grace begins, friend. And, I know we have a hard time giving ourselves grace, but I just want to let you know, embrace it for yourself. Like, you don't have to wait for anybody to give you approval. You don't need anybody to say that you are allowed to exercise your right to give yourself grace. You don't have to wait for validation from anybody. You just have to believe internally and know that it's yours to give. Like, grace is yours. You don't have to do anything to earn it. Again, it's already yours. That is so beautiful, right? And the reason why I'm repeating this over and over is because I personally know how important grace is for our mental health and for us just simply getting through life, right? Because life be life. And grace is the difference between falling into a deep depression and saying, okay, I'm going to give myself a chance to try again. Grace says that today ended this way, but I can start over tomorrow. I'm not held in an imprisonment of who I am today. So don't let the voice of the enemy whisper lies in your ear telling you that you're a failure and that you didn't get it right, that you're not good enough, because that's his whole goal. That's his whole agenda to what? Kill, steal, and destroy. And he wants to destroy your perception of yourself and how you see yourself. And if the enemy can distort your perception of who you are and whose you are and how God sees you, then he's already winning. But we're not going to let him win, right? Why? Because we're going to show ourselves grace. Grace is the door to seeing yourself the way that God sees you. And that's why I'm telling you this over and over, because I want you to learn to give yourself grace, not once a month, not once a year. I want you to practice giving yourself grace every single day. Do it daily, do it hourly if you have to. And again, don't confuse grace with the lack of accountability. Like, we must still remain accountable for our actions, for how we show up in the world. We must always, always strive to act with intention. But in those moments when fall short outside of your intentions, you have to learn to show yourself grace. You have to give yourself permission to try again and again and again. Give yourself permission to fall and say, okay, I failed this time, but I'm going to get up and I'm going to try it again until when? Until I get it right. Until I get it right. Until I get it right. You owe yourself grace. You owe yourself the gift of grace, friend. So we talked about the importance of extending grace to ourselves and how it positively impacts us as people. But I want to move on to something else, and that is extending grace to other people. And I know you probably don't want to hear this. You probably thinking like, dang, you just got me together about giving grace to myself. And now you want me to give it to other people? But it's so important for us to grow in this area, because the thing is, we cannot be out here extending grace to ourselves if we are not also willing to extend it to other people. And I know y'all, like, this part is so hard, because when somebody hurts us, when they disappoint us, when they fall short of our expectations, grace really can feel like the last thing that we want to give them. Like, I get it. I totally get it. Like, when somebody lie on you, when they betray you, when they accuse you, when they harm you, or even abuse you, it is so hard to extend grace. And it can feel impossible in those moments. But this is why you have to ask God to give you strength. The strength that you don't have to get through it, you got to ask Him and to lean on Him to help you get through it, because grace is not about excusing the bad behaviors and the bad actions of those people. It's not about saying what they did to you was okay. You're gonna remember, you're going to acknowledge it, like, that's for sure. But grace is about freeing your heart. It's about releasing yourself from the bitterness and the anger that their actions caused you, because those feelings, if they are left unchecked, they can consume your heart and literally swallow you whole, which can manifest in other areas of your life. And Matthew 5:7 says, "Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy." So mercy and grace go hand in hand. Like, when we extend grace to other people, we're actually living out God's most purest example. But again, let me be clear. Grace does not mean you have to tolerate toxic behavior. It does not mean that you don't set boundaries, because we do boundaries over here, okay? Boundaries are important. Protecting yourself is important. Grace just means that you can forgive and release, even in situations where you never ever get an apology. You never got an apology. It's, about saying that I'm not going to be held in bondage by what they did to me. And I'm not going to let their actions consume my life, but I'm going to take complete control. And one of the ways I'm taking control is by showing them grace. And so, you feel the hurt, you're going to feel the impact. But when you allow grace to fill your heart, it allows you to move freely. And so I have an action step for you, a faith step. I want you to think of one person that you've been holding resentment towards. Just one person. Like, it could be somebody who did you wrong. It could be somebody who hurt you, somebody who caused harm in some type of way, and it's still sitting heavy on your heart. And once you've thought of this person, here's what I want you to do. You ready for it? Pray for them. Pray for them. Not praying for their actions to change, so to speak, because God is in control of that and He's going to fix them, so to speak. But what you're praying for is their well being, praying that God blesses them, pray that God uses them, pray that God changes their heart, pray that He does all the amazing things that only He can do in their lives. And, I know you're probably thinking, like, listen, it's above me now. And you're probably right, because, like, when you pray for someone who hurt you, you're releasing them to God. That's what you're really doing. You're saying, God, I can't carry this anymore. I am giving this to you. Like, I am done. And so the beauty of this entire practice is that when you can show grace and lift up people who have wronged you and who have betrayed you, it really does truly free your heart. Like, it's hard to stay in bitterness and to have that in your heart when you've prayed for somebody and when you've given them over to God, because when you release them to them, He gives you peace about the situation. And then not only that, but God says that vengeance is His. And so you don't have to worry about getting back at them. You don't have to worry about proving a point or even letting the world know what they did to you. Like, now you can free your time and your energy to focus on the things that God has caused you to do. How freeing and beautiful is that? Okay. And I'll be honest with you again, this is not easy. It is a practice. Like, the first time you start doing this, it's going to feel uncomfortable. There's going to be some type of tension there. But the more you do it, the easier it's going to become. You pray for one person, and then next time someone wrongs you, you pray for them too. Okay. And then before you know it, you're going to be living a life full of peace and complete joy. You're not held in bondage by what people, have did to you, what people have done to you. You're not stuck replaying that harm that they're caused in your head over and over and over and over. Why? Because you are free. And I know you've heard this over and over again, but forgiveness is for you, not for them. Many times, the people who actually hurt you, they have moved on with their life. They are living their life. I don't know about their best life, but they're living their life. And then, guess they probably doing the same thing to somebody else. But who's stuck? You. Your mental health is stuck. Your emotional capacity is stuck. I don't want that for you. I want you to be healed and whole. And so you got to pray for these people and release them to God. Let go and let God. Are we clear on this? Let me know. Let me know in the comments. Send me some virtual high fives, some prayer hands, or even some some smoke signals. Just let me know that we're on one accord, because I want this for you so badly, and I know what it can do for your life. I promise you, I will not steer you wrong in this area. You deserve to be free. So stop letting them people hold bondage in your heart, okay? And so another part of grace is it's also actually a gift, like the gift of grace. Like, yes, we've forgiven and shown grace for our past mistakes and other people, but it's not just about showing and extending it to them. It's also about having the grace to trust God with your future, like the future that you can't see, the future you don't know how things are going to unfold, the future that only He knows, okay? Because if we're being honest, life doesn't always go as planned. Like, if you've been living, you know that by now. And so sometimes you may feel stuck in your growth. Sometimes you may feel stuck along your faith journey. Sometimes you may feel like you're in a valley, like a deep, deep valley. But during those times, it's actually grace to remind us that God's timing is always perfect. And so when you're going through a storm in life, even when it feels like very overwhelming and like you cannot see your way out, just think about the word grace. Grace gives you peace in the midst of the storm because it reminds you that God's timing is perfect. So yes, you may be in a valley right now, but guess what? That valley is teaching you a lesson, because God already sees that this time next year, you're going to be on a mountaintop. And so that's what grace does. Grace allows you to embrace the moment and the journey that you're in right now, knowing that God is working behind the scenes always, even when you can't see it. Isaiah 40:31 says, "But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not faint." What this tells us is that grace gives us strength. Grace gives us the strength to keep going. Grace gives us the strength to keep believing. Grace gives us the strength to keep hoping. And grace gives us the strength to do what? Keep the faith. So even when you may be in a valley, even when you go through the storms of life, I want to remind you that there is a gift of grace and growth. In your darkest seasons, you are graced for growth still. You are graced for propelling forward. You are graced for expansion, for abundance, for all the things that God has in store for you. He's gonna do it for you, okay? Faith. Trust that God's grace is carrying you through every challenge and every situation. Facts. Grace is a gift that you don't have to earn. Feelings. Even when you feel inadequate, remember that God's grace is sufficient, friend. Grace is a gift. It's a gift that you receive. It's a gift that you give to other people. And it's a gift that you use to grow. Remember that no matter where you are in life, God's grace is sufficient for you. And so I want to leave you with this faith formation, a faith formation to start your season. God's grace is sufficient for my every need. Say it with me. God's grace is sufficient for my every need. So until next time, I want to encourage you to reflect on grace this week. How can you start embracing it? How can you extend it? How is it working and showing up in your life? As always, stay blessed, keep the faith, and remember, God loves you. I love you. You are loved.